So hello everyone, thanks for keeping it true. It's a bit late today, and I would like to, be quick and introduce to you Jor. Today I will share with you four main, let's say, lines of thought. The first one, we need to start at least with, a bit of basics. Let's say, I would like to share with you an analogy between the internet and Web3. As you for sure know, we are early stage in terms of Web3 adoption. We need to cross the chasm and reach mainstream adoption from a wider perspective. Well, today we may ask ourselves how much confident, how much do we love to send to a smart contract 20K? And what does happen in case something goes wrong? Well, very often the kind of mindset as per today is something like, well, it's not really my business. This stuff is incredibly cool. We are building the future, which is a great, actually, motivation. But at the same point, I would like to show you and, share with you this reflection. If we think about the early 2000s, with the early internet, we were in a kind of very similar situation where platform operators at that time, they didn't feel really to be responsible for, the activities of their users. What actually it happened at that time is that, well, they understood that a huge amount of opportunities, they started missing a lot of opportunities in that market. And if we look nowadays, platforms like eBay or Alibaba, they are managing hundreds of millions of disputes every single year. What it is very interesting and probably salient is that, according to certain authors, it's like if legal rights and their enforcement constituted the trusted foundation for the adoption of the internet. Well, if we look, let's zoom back for a couple of seconds. And in general, as you know, as a human civilization, we needed rules and judges. With Web 2, certain platforms actually built their own system for solving disputes, which is, of course, limited to their scope. Let's think about eBay, let's think about PayPal. So probably the interesting question for today is, do we need for Web3 adoption, or do we need at all for Web3 a jurisdiction? Well, let's make a couple of considerations together about the relationship between Web3 and jurisdictions from a broader perspective. So first of all, you all will be familiar with a template of an agreement. I think you have signed hundreds of them in your life. And more or less, the three recurring elements are always three. We can define them as the three pillars of an agreement, which are identities, clauses, and a dispute resolution clause. Well, identities, very often they can be defined like party A and party B. Clauses, they define and describe the rights and obligations of the parties, party A and party B. And the dispute resolution clause, which identifies actually the jurisdiction, which is composed typically about rules, and the court or the authority that is actually entitled to enact justice. Now, what about Web3? Which is the Web3 stack? Well, smart contracts are, as we all know, immutable business logics, and we might think, well, we just need smart contracts. If we think, let's say, a bit more about this subject, we will realize that the current Web3 stack, as per today, looks a bit more similar to something like this. So currently, smart contracts, dApps or DAOs even, they still rely to a major or a minor extent to offline jurisdictions, and they offer, again, identities, legal contracts, dispute resolution. What's the problem with that? So I think if you spend some time on Twitter, you will realize that, every week, literally, something happens that shows the limits of the intersection and the interactions between, Web3 and the legal systems as a whole. You might remember a DAO that purchased actually one of the first original books of Dune, and they were thinking, oh yeah, we got this, now we have the book, we can create maybe a TV series, or we can publish the book, or stuff like that. Well, maybe it can sound fun, but okay, is this really what we want as a basis for what we're building? There are cases of DAOs that they actually vote about deleting or invalidating a SAFT previously, signed. Well, is this really the concept of autonomy that we want? So the root of all the problems, let's say, remains in the fact that the jurisdictions we live on, the mid-space or physical jurisdictions, were not taught or designed for digital use cases. They were not taught for Web3, of course. So why? Well, first of all, they are location-bound. Every one of you that runs a business perfectly know about the huge amount of compliance needed, and if you are in Web3, I bet that you have spent quite a few grand in lawyers. So, well, they are overall not so efficient, which means times, money required for any activity. Cross-border transactions are still very complex. And, well, there is a kind of very large topic, which is access to justice or access to dispute resolution, which, well, would leave us a bit unsatisfied because access to dispute resolution is ineffective. And, well, for sure, for Web3 users, it's quite limited. What about Jura and what we are building? So I would like to introduce to you the concept of decentralized autonomous jurisdiction, DAJ. Let's not confuse it with the DOJ, but let's come back to the template of the agreement I was showing you today before. We were saying 3 pillars: identity, clauses, and dispute resolution. Well, what we are building actually rethinks these 3 concepts. Identities become limited liability identities, or LLIs. I will come back on this topic in 2 slides. Clauses, they become open source standard contracts. And jurisdiction, or applicable law and competent jurisdiction, is going to become something that we can define a jurisdiction which is private and decentralized. I could spend a bit of time in introducing you to across the different principles behind this project, but I think the most interesting part is we are building something that is auditable in any moment. It's neutral, so there is no government involved, but this is the most important part, is interconnected and interoperable also with offline jurisdictions. It operates according to free market principles, and overall it's composable. Our mission, if we have to choose a few words, is to create the most efficient jurisdiction for the digital economy and for Web3 in particular. And I would like to maybe remark why we talk about autonomy and why we talk about decentralization. So from an autonomy standpoint, so what we are building is nothing else than a merchant law system or a private merchant law system. We leverage an existing legal framework in arbitration, so the UNCITRAL model law, which means that the decisions taken according to our arbitration platform and our protocol are also, in case of need, enforceable in physical or mid-space jurisdictions. But yes, Alessandro, why autonomous? Well, autonomous because you can decide with the counterparty, you can agree on the rules that will govern your agreement, you can pick the jurisdiction we are building, and you can get essentially the services of the jurisdiction itself. Why decentralized? Well, besides the use of censorship-resistant technology, what we are building is owned by its citizens. We are using the concept of network state. Maybe some of you is familiar with that. And the citizens are going to be the token holders. Now, for today, I would like to just introduce you briefly to 3 protocols that we are building on, and I would love to then receive feedback. We are going to stay here the whole day. In order to do so, I selected 3 questions and 3 answers. Clearly, these topics are quite large, so I I just wanted to give you a brief about what we're building. So the first question to share with you is, we live in a kind of particular world where today you can go back to your hotel, you can, with £100, you can open an LTD in the UK, and the LTD is going to offer you a limited liability for your business. At the same time, in this moment, you are liable or responsible with the entirety of your assets towards the governments or towards other maybe business partners. And why this really happens? So we are working for creating a Web3 crypto primitive that we are calling self-sovereign limited liability identity. So we are pretty excited about this concept, and we look forward to also build a standard with other projects around this concept. It should be technology neutral, and in short terms, it's a collateral attached to an identity. For example, 10,000 USDCs. You can sign contracts, which means you can enter into agreement with your LLI. It's extremely fast and cheap to create. In a few clicks, you can create how many LLIs you want. It's, most importantly, in my view, it's pseudonymous by default. So eventually, users can use a series of LLIs for creating pseudonymous economies, which at the same time are based on responsible actors. And last but not least, with the LLI, you can access to a jurisdiction. So let's make an example. You can use the LLI for accessing to a metaverse. And suddenly, you as a user become responsible, but to the extent that you decide upfront. So you are pseudonymous, but responsible at the same time. It's a sort of middle ground between two extremes, like a full anarchic vision of completely responsible users, no regulations, and the regulations from maybe governments. A second open question, which could be, why do we spend so much time reading and negotiating similar contracts every day, every week? At Jure, we have a fairly intense problem with NDAs. We hate NDAs. I mean, they are pretty much all the same, and we start reading at them and eventually negotiating them. Well, does it really make sense? We don't think so, especially for Web3. We are building an infrastructure. You can imagine that as a sort of Wikipedia for open source standard legal contracts. We start with legal contracts that are not Ricardian contracts, but we will get there. We are going to create a series of open source legal contracts that are free to use. You can sign them, and most importantly, you can actually trust them. So I don't know if you are familiar with the SAFE agreement from Y Combinator. It has been quite a big change in the startup industry, and the value of the SAFE from Y Combinator, it's not in the legal template itself. We all can find online many legal templates. The value is that you rely, when you want to use the SAFE, on the contractual balance that has been already negotiated for you. So we are trying to do the same for multiple contracts for the industry. So in a certain way, we are building a Web3 native legal layer, and we are building some Web3 legal common goods for the .sam ecosystem. So if you are a project in the space and you need, or you might need a series of agreements, we would like to work with you and to help you, essentially. Last question for today. Why dispute resolution or access to justice is so slow and so inefficient? You can open a YouTube account and start earning money almost immediately, but if you need to sue someone or ask for a third party to judge, it will take years and a lot of money. So this doesn't really make sense. It's completely incompatible with what we're building in general in the digital economy and in Web3. We are building a protocol for orchestrating dispute resolution. There is a court registry. Different dispute resolution providers can connect. Some of them are going to be fully decentralized, some of them less. The decisions are going to be enforceable multi-chain, which means almost immediately also, but the same decisions can be also enforced in the physical jurisdictions. So this might be something, well, quite relevant in a few years from now, when Web3, let's say, will cover also widely physical goods and assets. So, of course, what we aim is to enable a digital dispute resolution which is efficient and fast. So it can go it can last 10 days, as much as 90 days, or eventually 4 months for a fully fledged arbitration. A couple of words of what is coming next. So we would like, as I mentioned to you, to talk with anyone in the space that is in the need of utilizing legal agreements or for your project. We would like to onboard you in our working groups program. We are building a system that will transition by the end of the year into a DAO-based system for approving and maintaining these open source standard contracts. This is, let's say, the legislative component of the network state. And please reach me out. I would love to chat with you and, onboard you for working together on this. If you are a DDI project as well, we would like to talk about the LLI and build together the standard in terms of limited liability entity. And last but not least, we are hiring. We are opening a few roles. If you are in the space and in marketing, engineering, or legal community, we would love to have a chat. We are looking for like-minded people that relate with these topics, and we would like to build together. So I selected for today just 3 highlights for our roadmap. So we launched our own arbitration platform. The protocol will support any type of product of different, let's say, parties and tier party. In Q3, we expect the release of our testnet, and by the end of the year, we will complete the token swap of the Jur token on Polkadot. For these early days, in this pre-constitutional phase, we have created an NFT passport. It's completely free. You can literally go now online and submit your wallet. You can get it, and it's going to be fun. Essentially, it's a commemorative NFT, and maybe in 2 years from now, you will be able to say, well, I was an OG of Jur. More activities you're going to participate, more stickers or stamps you will receive on your passport, and why not? Maybe one day you will receive special benefits for the actual citizenship program when we will launch it. Tim Draper is one of our investors and advisor, joined as citizen #1. And so what else? I thank you for your attention today. We are looking for providing to this ecosystem all the support from the Web3 legal and governance spectrum. We hope to, we will do our best in doing that. And next time that you might have your NFT copyright infringed or your agreement unfulfilled, you can decide to seek remedy in Switzerland or Singapore and maybe wait months or years, or you can rely on Jur and solve disputes in 1 click. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you, Alessandro. We have a few questions here. The first is the dispute resolution going to be decentralized?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So as I was mentioning, so at the protocol level, our philosophy is to be completely open. There will be a court registry, so different providers will be able to register. What we will seek with the protocol is to ensure auditability of the procedure. This is what we intend for somehow Web3 justice, which means that potentially also more centralized arbitration platforms might connect. We believe that in general, decentralized dispute resolution is, well, we don't really need it for the entirety of use cases, also because it could be, in general, costly. And so the protocol is pretty open, and every provider can connect on that.
Wonderful. And how does Jur connect to offline real-world jurisdiction?
Great question. So, well, leveraging the existing regulatory framework, essentially the decisions that are taken into arbitration can be enforced before the local courts. We will have one day a network of embassies represented by eventually experts or law firms, and they will materially bring the necessary documentation before the offices of the local court. And, well, except some edge cases, the enforcement should be ensured, which means, and this is very important actually, so this system in general, also digital arbitration, it's exclusive. Exclusive means once you and I decide to use this system and we write the right clause in the agreement, we can't change idea. So we can't then, oh yeah, but I want to sue in the local court. This is forbidden. So this is why, I mean, the enforcement is going only to happen for actually sizing maybe a real estate asset or a physical good.
Wonderful. And what is the difference between an LLI so, and a normal corporation or GmbH?
Great question. So, well, the LLI has this name for now, and it's essentially a collateral. So it's a sort of escrow open to multiple parties, and the scope is making you responsible to a limited extent. An LTD typically is a center also of costs and revenues, and as you know, you need also to pay taxes on the profits. Of course, the LLI can't do that. Let's say it's a guarantee system for now. We might get there, and this is part of well, our long-term roadmap. So we need to be, as a system, a special economic zone. There are a few of them. The Dubai free zones, for example, are a good example. And in that case, well, the LLI might evolve in something closer to the LTD, but not on day one.
Wonderful. And those are all of our questions.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Alessandro.
Thank you. Thank you.